Greetings. This is Coach Jackie with Uzazi Podcast. Uzazi Podcast is designed to help you reflect on your beliefs about parenting and to think about why you parent the way that you do and whether you achieve the outcomes that that you intend to achieve with your children. So it's really about starting from the inside out and reflecting on why you parent the way that you do, so that if you find that you're not achieving the outcomes that you desire, then you can begin to do something about it. I think we all agree that one of the most important influences on how we parent is how we were parented ourselves. And so today's theme is really around how our own upbringing affects our parenting style. And today I am very privileged to have Lillian Dambuki, my good friend, a parenting coach, and many other things, to share a very interesting story about her parenting approach and how her own upbringing influenced that approach. Lillian, thank you very much for agreeing to do this. Please begin by introducing yourself.
Thank you, Jackie. It's always such a pleasure to spend some time with you in such moments, or just when we are having a cup of tea. You are a woman who has so much wisdom, and I always learn so much, from you, especially about parenting and just about other issues of life. And it's not only in the fact that you are my friend, but I have seen the same thing reflected in your children and in your home and the way you run everything. So it's always such a pleasure in such a moment. And also apart from that, when we just have a cup of tea. And I like how disciplined you are. Jack is this person who says 1 o'clock to 2, it's 1 o'clock to 2. Yes. So it's such a pleasure, especially to do this podcast with you. My name is Lillian Dambuki. I am a daughter. I'm a wife to Andrew Dambuki, and I'm mother to Mwendwa, 18, Jadidi, 14, and Janice, 12. And I'm a friend to many. I'm a mentee to Jackie, and I'm a mentor to many other people out there. Yes, and I'm also a Christian, so my parenting is influenced by the Word of God. Yes.
Okay, Lillian, thank you. And thank you for the very kind words that you said about me. What are some of the joys you have experienced parenting your 3 children?
Jackie, actually, the joys of parenting, I think the joy begins that moment when that child comes out. And you see, it's actually filled with joy, and at the same time with fear, because you're wondering whether you have the capability to actually raise this child. And I remember bringing home my firstborn son, and I was really, really worried, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this child? Then it hit me that I didn't have to do anything. All I just needed to do is breastfeed him and make him sleep and change him. And that's how my journey started 18 years ago about parenting. So my joys of parenting are many. I was just reflecting on it, and I realized there are many. It's that moment when they first call you mama. And when they say they call you mama first, or they call daddy first, and you are like, you're so excited. The joys of parenting is seeing your child turn into a mini you and a mini of their father. That was such a joy for me, when you can see yourself at the same time you see your husband in that child, and the way they don't fall far from you. Like the way I always, when I'm parenting parents, I just tell them, that child is not far from you. Don't worry, they will turn out right. And just seeing them teach you the things you taught them. When you told them something and they bring it back to you, but mom, you said you should not do that, and then see them inspire you and encourage you, especially when you're down. That's just the joy of parenting. When your child can look in your eyes and know, Jackie, you're not happy. And they sit next to you and they tell you, Mom, what is bothering you? You don't seem happy. or when you come home and you're happy and they just are happy. Those moments when you got home from a long trip and not say, I love you, mom. I mean, or those things they used to draw when they are growing up and they write there how much they love you. And when they surprise you on your birthday or anniversary with flowers or a card or a meal early in the morning. Like I remember there's a time I woke up, I didn't even know it was Mother's Day. And my children were busy, I mean, making breakfast for me. So those are the moments that it just brings out that joy and it just inspires you. The joy of motherhood is actually, or parenting, is actually to see the child you are raising becoming and getting formed into the person, a responsible and independent person. Your dreams about that child might not come to pass, but at least them becoming responsible and becoming who they're supposed to be. Because why I'm saying that is because my older son, I really hoped for him to be a Kofi Annan, you know, and now he moved in the world of sports, and I'm thinking Kofi Annan is in the UN, you know. So it's just that joy of seeing your child become responsible and they're able to take care of themselves. Yes, there are so many, Jackie. I don't even know where to stop. I mean, when my daughter comes, she's 11 now, and she comes and she's like, Mom, your nails are looking so bad. Let us work on them. And she's with the Q-Tex and the nail file, and she starts filing my nails, because those are the joys of parenting. It's just that seeing your child come home and they are worried about their friend. Oh, now I want to cry. When I remember when my children come home and they have come home and their friends are depressed, and they come and tell me, Mom, my friend was saying she wants to commit suicide. What should I do? And then I'm like, can I talk to them? Like, no, I don't want them to know I told you or told anybody. Just tell me what to tell them. You know, such moments when you realize they actually care about the life of the other person out there. When they come and tell you, my friend is so depressed, Mom, can we pray for them? Those are moments that I actually find that I'm doing a good job. And it's such a joy to see that your child is actually also reaching out and helping that. And I think my joyous moment was with my son, who hated cooking. I'll finish with this one. And before he went to college, I remember me and my husband tried to teach him simple skills for cooking. Just know how to make spaghetti, know how to make, come I show you, cabbage is easy to make. And my son did not want anything to do with the kitchen. Then he had to go to college and he had to look for meals. And then at that particular time, when he sent us a photo of a meal he had prepared because he checked on Google, it was just, I had to share with people. I'm like, just allow me to brag. He finally could cook for him. Yeah, for me, that's just the joy.
Yes, indeed, Lillian. There are countless joys of parenting, and I really appreciate your sharing yours with us here. Now, Lillian, what inspires your parenting approach?
What inspires my parenting approach, actually, Jackie, is also tied into, honestly, how I was parented. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, the fact that when we're growing up, you notice that, I don't know in your home, but in my home and most homes, it was always like the boys were pampered compared to the girls. So it's like you grow up having to take care of your brothers, or you have to take care of, the girls were the ones who did all the work. Okay, so in my parenting, in that parenting, when I look back, the things that I didn't like, the way I was parented, is what has inspired me to parent a bit differently. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that the other thing that inspires me to parent is actually to raise that child to become who they were created to be. Every human being has a gift or a calling or a talent deep inside them, where they get they are pulled towards. So mine was actually to help my children, to pull them towards what comes naturally for them. Mm-hmm. And that was also my way of parenting. The other thing is that I wanted children who were kind and who were disciplined and who respected people. Because one of my values, my highest value, is peace. If I lose peace, then I know something is wrong. And if it's a relationship, it's time to walk out. My second value is respect for people. So I was inspired that I want to raise children who will respect people, respect authority, respect their elders. So even many times, people will come home and they will tell me, but mom, so-and-so comes to school with this and that. And I will tell them, no. As far as I remember, I don't have a child in my home called that. And because the school said we cannot take that, you are not going to take just because another child took that. So also it's about children who will respect authority. Because Jackie, you cannot do life. If I passed away, I didn't want my children to live with their auntie or their uncle or whoever takes them in to warn that these children are so indisciplined. Nobody wants to take them in because they are so indisciplined. Because you cannot predict. I realized there's something that I needed to teach my children so that they themselves, anybody can take them in, anybody can mold them, anybody can they can live with anybody and they become so my children being a dread in case something happened to you. So I looked at all rounds. What kind of child do I want? I want a child who will respect people. I want a child also who is, that inspired me to raise that was confident in themselves. You know, who can stand up for themselves and who can speak. Yes.
Okay, so I heard you talking about the fact that you recognize that your children have been created to be something and you want them to achieve that potential. You've also spoken about some very important values and you want your children to, you know, to have certain values as well. But you also mentioned the fact that the way you were parented has influenced some of the choices that you have made. Now, I know that you had a very specific parenting challenge as you are growing up. Please share it and tell us how it has impacted your approach to parenting.
Yeah, actually, Jackie, at times I wonder whether I was parented or I just grew up. Actually, one of the things that inspired me actually to do parenting or to want to help other parents to parent their children right. I remember going to a parenting class. And when I went to a parenting class, until that stage, I was very aware that I was doing everything that needed to be done right. I didn't realize that some of the way I had been parented, it had actually poured into me. And I was passing the same kind of parenting to my child. So when I went to this parenting class, I remember I went alone. And when I was there and I had this man talk, especially in the area of disciplining your child, I went back home and I told my husband, I'm not parenting these children alone. You are coming to this class with me. Because whatever I am learning, we need to learn together so that we can do all those things together. It was an eye-opener for me. Until that far, Jackie, I thought I was doing a good job. And that's why it is so important. You can always think you will be a good parent. You don't need parenting skills. You need parenting skills because you are so blinded to how you see things based on how you grew up. So it is like at your back. You cannot scratch your back. You need somebody to scratch your back for you. So that's why people need to go for parenting. That's why I'm so passionate about parenting. So when I realized, looking at that, many times I realized that's what actually made me realize that I just grew. I was not parented. I just grew. My parents left me when I was young to go to the US to pursue an education. So I grew up with my grandparents. So at some stage of my life, those are the people I knew. I grew up with my grandparents. And you know how parents are, grandparents are. Grandparents, they will not help you when you come from school and you have they will not bother about your academics. Your grandparents, there are so many things that they will not bother about. As a child, I remember sitting and my grandmother, at that time you're locked. She locks the house, she leaves you outside, and you're on your own. So as a child, I felt like alone. There was nobody to take care of me until evening when they come back is when you are let into the house. Then I remember my grandfather dying. I think I was in standard 1. And then I had to go live with uncles. And then when I was living with these uncles, then that's, I think, from there, and then from that uncle, I went to another uncle, and then I went to another uncle. So it's like I had nothing or something that I could hold on where I could feel like I belong. So I realized that I didn't, by the time I was starting, when my parents came back, I was a teenager. So you can, you understand teenagerhood is another stage. This child has already formed themselves to become something by the time they are becoming teenagers. I remember one incident whereby in my parenting myself, when my son turned 13, and when my son turned 13, I remember he became somebody I was not understanding. And I remember coming from school, because I had told him when he was 12, 11, I said, here is where I find you when I come to pick you. I will only find him there. Now he has become 13, and where I told him I'll find him, he's not waiting for me in that place, you know? And you have to have a conversation. So I remember we are having a conversation, and I'm upset, Jackie. I'm driving, and I'm upset with this boy, and I'm talking and I'm trying to explain what's wrong. How could you do that? And now I have told you. And then I turn to him and I say, I don't even recognize that person inside of you. Who are you? I want my son back. And he looked at me like, what is mom talking about? Why? Because he had become a teenager. And it was another phase that I needed to learn as a parent to manage. Okay, he was not that child who said, let's go here, and he's following me all over the place. He had moved from that stage of where they follow you to everybody to a place to tell you, no, I want to stay home. And it becomes a shock because he was my first child. It was a shock when I was seeing those changes as he became independent. So I came to stay with my mom and my dad when I was becoming independent. So I realized as a teenager, my mom didn't know me. I didn't know my mother. I didn't know my father. So she didn't know me too. And then I'm coming from the village. Okay, so now from the village, we don't use spoons and forks. Then they're coming from the US, they know how to use spoons and forks, you know? So I don't see anybody telling me this is how you use a fork, this is how you, everybody will just observe me and look at me, and then I'll be like scolded, you know? And then there were so many other things that I didn't know how to dress the way other people dress. I remember you had 1 or 2 dresses in the village. So of course, when you went to bath, it's the same dress you wore. So you come in and you're wearing that dress, and maybe it's not smelling nice, and you're told, what's wrong with you? You smell, get out. You know, those things that you should are actually being guided and being told. And because we didn't know each other, you know, it's like it brought a friction. And I didn't understand her, she didn't understand, and it was huge. Then my mom had to leave, again, go back to leave the country, leave. Then I was in campus by then. Now I finally got to stay with a friend. And when I'm staying with this friend, that's when actually I saw, because she was a godly woman who loved her children. Now is when I say seeing parenting also in a different way. Okay. And I know my mom loves me, and she loved me. She just did the best she could do, but we didn't know each other. She had not raised me up to understand. So one of the things I realized that it was impacted me, and it was a challenge. It was in the area of belonging. I didn't, and therefore every child has to belong. So for me, that made sure that my children knew they were loved and they belonged with us. I have never said to my children, when the people say, oh, they go to their grandmothers during holidays, I can't do it. I'm like, it's my responsibility. They stay with me. I'll come visit you, and I will go back with them, because I don't want them to feel like they have no place they belong. The other thing that actually was such a challenge was also in disciplining. Disciplining and correction was done in such a way that you were left feeling like you either did not belong or you were not loved. And as a child, your parent is disciplining you because they love you, or they talk to you because they love you. So in that sense, Jackie, I felt like I would be disciplined, but no words of affirmation, or I was not explained to why I'm getting that discipline. And in the sense, what did it create in me? It created, first, remember that I was raised by different people. So already I have this format that I'm not loved, nobody cares about me, I am unworthy, I don't belong. So all these things I didn't even know that's what my subconscious mind was forming. I realized it later that it had impacted me when I was married and I was already having my career. Is when I could see this thinking. I didn't hear those voices when I was growing up. They were just coming up when I was already older. So I realized the area of correction. So in my parenting, when I discipline my child, I explain why you're being disciplined. First, we have rules. We set rules in our homes. And I'm like, when you break this rule, this is the consequence of it. When they were a bit younger, there was a way I'm an African mama and I'm a Christian. I don't shy away from taking the road and disciplining that child, because the Bible says that inside a child there's bound foolishness. Foolishness is in a child, and it's only a rod that drives that foolishness out of that child. So I know a child is born foolish, and it's me to be able to discipline that child. But then I set rules first. When my child breaks something or does something that I had not set the rule, it's time to teach them and tell them, Mama, next time you do this, it is wrong. But if you do this, this is the consequences. So even right now when they are grown up, there are rules. Like they know when they're supposed, like for example, one of the rules that if you don't wash your dishes at night and Mama has gone to sleep, if you didn't wash those dishes overnight, you will take care of the next day's dishes. And because they don't like doing dishes, and they know, because I discipline when they're young, they'll obey. So somebody makes sure that they leave the sink clean because they don't want to wash the next day's dishes because they belong to somebody else. So that's one. The other thing I hated, Jackie, quickly, because of time, is comparison. I hated that so much. I was compared to my either siblings who are either doing very well in school, or I was compared with somebody else's child. I hate that up to today. I just do not compare me to somebody else. I think it's something I need to come for some therapy from you to be helped to get rid of it. You know, and that's one of the things I chose. I will not compare my children. And I think it's what made me learn about personalities, understand every child has a different personality. There are those who will love cooking. There are those ones who do not love cooking. And I have seen it in my children. My second son loves to cook. My firstborn son doesn't love to cook. And he says, because you guys love to cook, I will be doing the dishes, you cook. And I respect that bit. It was not about forcing him to do it, you know. So that was one of the reasons that actually inspired my parenting. And just the fact that also being guided in my career. I wanted to do design. I remember I wanted to go to Evelyn School of Design because I love clothes and I love beauty and I love all those things. And I was told, no, shipped to campus. You know, I had passed, I think my parents, then they just thought, I mean, how can you even start going to a college when you're supposed to, a degree was everything, you know, you understand when we grew up. So for me, it's just sitting back and also being able to listen to what does my child want? What does my child want? What comes naturally for them? And being able to support them at the same time putting boundaries. I said, I'll support you in your football, but remember that at 18, you are becoming an adult. At 24, you're out of my house. I will not pay rent for you and I will not take care of you. So whichever choices, know that you have only to yeah. So yeah, those are the few that I can yeah, but my worst was belonging. Jackie, that is what affected my belonging. Has been the most horrible one for me. Even when I'm your friend, at times I feel like, am I really bothering them? Do I really belong into their space? Do they really want me? So many times I found myself having to self-approval a lot, and it has held me back. Before even I post on Facebook, I second guess myself because I'm so worried. So that was the greatest challenge of just being, and I didn't realize it until I was married, that it had actually affected me. Because when I got married, I remember coming from our honeymoon and I was thinking, I'm living with this man for a short while and I'll move on. Is when it hit me, oh my goodness, I have never settled. So even many times, I mean, even in that quarreling, I'm like, I can leave. I don't have to stay with you. And my husband's like, you are here to stay. This is a marriage, you know? So that one affected me a lot. And also being, yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Lillian, for for your honesty and sharing how the instability that you experienced as a child growing up affected your sense of belonging and
Worth.
and many other things, your self-worth and things like that. But from the way you have spoken about how you parent and all that, I do understand that you have really put in a lot of work in order to overcome those feelings so that you can parent your children differently. What are the lessons that you draw from how you have handled, all those feelings of not belonging, all those feelings of maybe not being worthy? What lessons have you drawn from them?
Jackie, I think the first thing, if I was ever to advise the younger me, I would tell her, seek for help.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I honestly sought for help. If I had looked for a counselor or somebody to talk to,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll have been far. But what I did, because some of those things bring in you a feeling of shame.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel ashamed to tell people about yourself because they will think you are not worthy. They will think there is something there. So there was always this feeling of not wanting to go out there and to just look for help, at least from a professional or from someone.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did most of the time, for me, I read a lot of books, especially motivational books.
Mm-hmm.
So I will read a lot of books. And then I think the first time also when I tried to look for help, I remember I think I talked to a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, go home and like obey what you're told.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, many times even you felt like you are not being understood. And nobody will understand that you are actually obedient and you're doing everything that you are told to do. You are not. I was not that child who was disobedient. I was, and up to now, I'm a stickler to rules. I mean, I was the assistant head girl at Pangani Girls, and so that's one of the top schools. The teachers saw the leadership in me. But so if to be picked to hold that level of leadership in a school, you must be a child who obeys rules.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was not that kind of child who obeyed rules. So that one also threw me off. So when I look back at that particular time, I wish I looked for help from a professional. Mm-hmm. So I hid my past for many years inside me. And by the time I started thinking, and then I also, because it had also confused me into who I was supposed to and what I needed to do. I was working for an organization where it was one of the top-notch organizations in Kenya. And at that particular time, I was doing a job for money, and I didn't enjoy it. I didn't honestly enjoy the job, and I knew this is not what I want to do. This is not what I would have ever wanted to do. It was not Monday was also a dread. Then at that particular time, you held a talk at SEK. And then I came for that talk. I remember, I think your son was doing the video, he was registering, Jackie. And then I remember we came in, and then I heard you speak. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I was like, it just brought something outside me. And I was like, I feel like that's what I want to do. I didn't understand what it is, but I realized that's what I wanted to do. So at that particular time is when now my journey of becoming a coach and reading about it and talking to other coaches is one now that took me to the place where I have been to become whom I'm supposed to be, and now drew up the lessons and helped me to start understanding who I am supposed to be. So it's when I'll read a book and then I'll get, I can still this, I can feel it. And then I listen to somebody, I'm like, this actually is, this is happening because of what happened here. So I say bringing out those things that were hidden, the emotions. In fact, I remember I read a book, and the book was on millionaires' mindsets. It's a millionaires' mindset book. And I remember the man starts in the beginning of his book, he talks about how you are trained and about the root affecting the fruit of the tree. And one of the things he says that the files you have inside you are the files that you seem to be able to carry, and they'll control everything you do. And I remember he said one of the things you have to do exercise, go and look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you love yourself, tell yourself you're worthy. And Jackie, I was shocked because here in my head, I believed I was worthy in my head. But when I faced the mirror, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. That's when it hit me that I have never actually looked at myself in the mirror. And I struggled, and I finally looked at myself, and I said, you are worthy. And I broke down and cried and cried and cried. I did. First, it was so difficult, but I cried and cried and cried. I couldn't believe it. And I think every time I told myself I was worthy, I cried like for several days. I did not know that it was actually even bottled inside there. So that was another lesson I learned. So I had to practice, to write it down. Like now, even you can see, we are zooming. When you see that, I've written there, chosen by God. That's also a way of me telling myself, you are chosen. Why? Because I didn't feel like I belonged. So now this, most times I write precious one. Why? Because I want to tell myself you're precious. So I had to start telling myself these things that were not told to me as I was growing up. The things that I was not told, Lillian, you're bright, or Lillian, you're brilliant, or well done to this. So those are the things now I also started learning that you need to tell yourself. I had to learn to be kind to me. And I had also to learn to accept my husband pointing out where I was passing on my own parenting to our children. Because I remember there's a day, like my older one, I told you, I attended parenting class when my older one was a bit older. So my disciplining is what I picked as I was growing up. Because if I did something wrong, it was being chapward, and you are chapward and you're told, get out of here, you know? So I was passing it on that to him without me realizing I'm doing that. My husband told me, be very careful, this boy might end up not liking you. And I remember when he was 12, I spoke to him in a certain way when he was 12, and he told me, Mom, every time you speak to me like that, I think you don't love me. And Jackie, that was an eye-opener for me. I looked at him, I'm like, something has to give way, something has to change. Because I realized I had passed on exactly, and at times you say, I'll never do this. It's a lie you're telling yourself. Unless you have somebody to open your eyes. So I was to open your eyes to see. So at that particular time, yes, my husband also was able to point out, because I had shared with him some of the things I had gone through when I was growing up, and he was able to point out that. So some of the lessons are also, Jackie, to watch my children. I tell my children about their sexuality. I am careful where my daughter goes. I am careful to check who she's hanging around with. I became that conscious also about their own sexuality, and protect where they go for sleepovers, and just not make sure that they will get somewhere where something will happen to their body or their mind, and I am not aware. So those are just some of the lessons that yes, I learned, and there are many. Coach, you always pick up one thing after the other, and in your parenting journey, and even right now, the other day I was talking to my son, and we're talking about, he's 18 now, and we're talking about marriage. And I was telling him about, and he was talking about when he marries a wife, and he was telling me what the things he'll be doing or what he will do. And I say, you can't do that. And he says, why, Mom? Nowadays, you don't know how people will behave tomorrow. And I was telling him, no, sweetheart. You cannot do that. She's your wife. And as long as she's your wife, you belong together. So some of those lessons just come as you're going. Then I at times now, because he's older, I can tell him some of the weaknesses, the wrongs we have done to each other with the dad. And I'm like, I made a mistake here. Your dad must have made a mistake here because we're talking about investment. And then I told him, we didn't know, we were never taught about investments. Those are things you teach your children. You were never taught. So Jackie, we've never invested. As we got our money, we ate it. Me, the things I saw my parents do when my dad had money, we'll go to Mombasa for holidays. So every time I got a bonus to holiday. I didn't see them. I mean, I didn't see them invest. Maybe they invested and they didn't tell us. So my son is learning about investment, something that I never did. So some of the lessons also come up as you learn as a parenting about yourself. So when it comes to teaching our children about money, we failed miserably. And that's the bit that my older son is taking part and going to YouTube and learning about investment and learning about money and learning about saving. And now he was telling me, Mom, I can help you guys with your finances. You're 18-year-old. I told you earlier the joys of parenting. When they come back to teach you something, you didn't teach them, but they have taught themselves. And he comes back and he tells me, I can teach you about finances. And I said, it's okay. He's like, I have slides. I said, that's good. Tonight, you will take us through those slides. So when we were going through that is when I was telling him, this is the mistake we made with your dad. And I pray that you won't make that mistake with your wife. Then I mentioned to him some of our good friends whom he knows who are doing very well. And I say we might have had the same finances when we were starting, but they're that because they did this, and now they seem to be okay. We didn't do that. So it's also just being transparent. And also the other big lesson that I can tell you, Jackie, the biggest lesson also I learned is to apologize to your child. After I learned that I was parenting wrongly, I went back to my older son and in front of his siblings. And he has a strong personality, honestly, that boy. He has a very strong person, and he needed a bit to be able just to get him to comply. And I had to apologize to him. I'm like, the way I was disciplining you, it was wrong. And I had to apologize before him. And even right now, when I do something wrong, I'm able just to go to them and tell them I'm sorry. So at times, I think just getting something like just from your parent or somebody who raised you, an uncle or a grandma, to say, okay, I went wrong when I did this and this where you're concerned. It helps you heal. So that was also one of the lessons, that I apologize to them when I'm wrong so that they don't feel hold anything inside of me, that I apologize for doing that. And another example I'll show you. One of the things I grew up was, you will be told anything. You're stupid. You're like this. All those things. And they will go in and they bind you. And I remember there's a time in a spur of anger, I told one of my sons, I think he did something they were still young, and he broke one of my best jewelry. And I was like, you asked, in that moment, the word stupid came out. And I think he was like 3. At 5, no, he was, I think 5. The sister must have been 3 or 4, around there. And the sister maybe was 2. And when he was 7, around 8, he said it, Mom, you called me stupid another time. And the sister says, yes, you did. It stuck with them. I apologize. And I had apologized to him before. But now he was, but I said, but I apologize. Didn't I ask you to forgive me? You're still holding it in the inside of you. So some of those negative words you tell your children without knowing that their subconscious mind and their spirit especially will carry them until when they are old. So those are some of the lessons I can say that the mistakes I've also made just in the spur of being angry. That's why I say you can't discipline, don't talk when you're angry to your child, because those words will be careful what you tell them. So yeah.
Thank you, Lillian. As you are describing, the chosen one, the precious one, I think you should also add there the generous one, because I really appreciate your generosity in sharing these very personal and very sensitive stories, but which I believe can help someone out there who is perhaps struggling with some of the things that you struggled with, maybe who is wondering how to make amends with their child, maybe who thinks that it's too late. But I think when they hear your story, they could be inspired to change their ways. So as we finish, Lillian, you're a parenting coach. And so now I want to invite you to just talk a little bit about your programs, what you do, and how people can get in touch with you in order to learn from you.
Okay. First, my Facebook page is Lillian Nyangor Ndambuki. That's my Facebook page if you wanted to get to me. I train, I'll say train or make parents aware of children who are 0 to 12 years old. So there's a program where I take you through about disciplining, about finances, about cleaning, house chores, about responsibility. So that's a whole thing until maybe they're around 12 years old. And also just, especially in the areas of discipline, until what stage do you stop? Because then how do you discipline your child? So that, because I remember being disciplined in front of people, and it was quite demeaning. It demeans your child. And then I have also a teens program, how to parent teenagers between 12 to 17. And then, and I do this in group, whereby if you are many, but if you want a one-on-one whereby you're struggling with something with your parents, I can also talk to you. I also go to schools to teach parents about, especially raising up teenagers, and just take the changes that teenagers going, how you should start now realizing you have to listen to them. You cannot use the same method you used when they were 0 to 12 as teenagers, because they are growing up. That's one of them. The other thing that, as you are talking, I'm thinking I should add. As you are talking, I realized I should add parenting parents. Because as I was talking to you about it, and as I told you, at times when you're training or you're talking to somebody about your story, things come up as a coach, because a coach, you're coached to pick out things that are inside. So I realized, yeah, people should also go for being parented, how to be parented themselves, how you can be parented. Because when you say Lillian, on those ones, you should also add generous. So I said, I think I need to be parented, so that I need to go somebody who can parent me and then tell me all the nice things I needed to hear as I was growing up. Maybe I should do that. And tell all the younger me. That felt nice. It was feeling nice to be told I'm generous. I mean, yes. So those are just the programs that I have on parenting. Of course, I'm a teacher and a facilitator. I love to teach, to train and facilitate the corporate level in leadership and all that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lillian. And if you're listening to this and you would like to get in touch with Lillian, remember her Facebook page is Lillian Nyangor Dambuki. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. And I encourage you to speak to her. As she has said, she has programs to help you parent your under 12, your under 12s, but also your teenagers. Thank you very, very much for sharing your story, Lillian. I'm sure it's going to inspire very, very many people.
Thank you so much, Jackie, also for the opportunity to share my story, so that if somebody's out there can get inspired. It's if you've done it wrong, as you said, it's not too late. One of the things I tell parents, a child will always love you. And they always want that connection because they came from you. A child will always, that's why you see somebody who is a single mom, has raised their child, they're in their 20s, they go looking for their parents. That's why you find somebody who was adopted. When they grow up, they realize they were adopted, they go looking for their parents. There's always that connection. So that's what I can say, that if you have done it wrong, there's always a chance, because that child belongs to you.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Lillian. This has been Uzazi Podcast.